The debate on calendar reform as it has occurred up to Second World War reflects a total immersion in the lens of the Western Gregorian mind. The argument that calendar change is a threat to religion is posed only by the religion whose calendar is the object of the calendar reform debate. That the accident of history placed the Vatican's calendar as the world standard only hardened the position of its defenders. That the principal objection of the calendar reform was the inclusion of a day outside of the weekly cycle, hence assuring 4 equal quarters of 91 days or 13 7-day weeks each, is astonishing in light of the harmonic regularity that would be obtained by such a reform. The very notion of an unbroken succession of 7-day weeks since the beginning of creation is actually a profoundly linear conception of time. The argument that a break in this succession would cause worldwide chaos, barbarism, and the decline of religion pales when one contemplates the actual course of events since the Second World War or even during the entire 20th century. Never has there been more war, more violent death, and the proliferation of more weapons of mass destruction than any other time in history. Could this be because the human populace is in the grip of a calendar whose actual measure defies harmony, and whose proponents have safeguarded its reform by regulations which defy the possibility of any real reform? In 1956, the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations adjourned the debate on the matter of the calendar reform indefinitely. The cumulative inertia of the dogma of the Gregorian calendar held sway, and with it, the dominance of the civilization which had grown up in its shadow. We must assert that the concept of an unbroken succession of the weekly cycle is a Western provincialism. The notion of the 7-day week is not shared by the calendars of many other civilizations and cultures. Are we to say that the only true way is that of the 7-day week, in unbroken succession as maintained by the Gregorian calendar? No, for this would be to fall into a type of chauvinism and imperialism by which the Gregorian calendar came into prominence in the first place. While the debate on reform of the Gregorian calendar, the world civil calendar, had fallen dormant, the problems of the Cold War only increased, compounded by the impended path of global industrialization. The result was not only the escalation of nuclear terror, but the negative effect of unbridled industrialism on the global environment. In such a complexity of social and technological forces, calendar reform seemed remote and irrelevant. In 1987, a book called The Mayan Factor was published. For the first time, a comprehensive effort had been made to understand the system of thought produced by the ancient Maya of Central America, which was focused on a calendrical mathematics and astronomy that was unique to the history of the Earth. By the process of history, this book could only have been produced when it was, for only by this time was enough known of the ancient and contemporary indigenous Maya. The later Maya civilization was crushed by the Spaniards in the 16th century. In 1562, a Catholic priest, Bishop de Landa, burned all the books he could find, and smashed as many sculptures and works of art as he could, while he had the great pyramid temples of the Mayan pilgrimage center of Izamal taken down stone by stone, to be reused for the construction of Christian churches and cathedrals. The auto da fe of Bishop de Landa caused him to be called back to Europe to report to his superiors. In 1572, the very year Gregory XIII came to power and called for the calendar reform 10 years hence, Bishop de Landa published his book on the knowledge of the Maya, who he had either destroyed or converted. Apart from Bishop de Landa's book, knowledge of the ancient Maya was now left to time and the jungle, awaiting discovery centuries later by teams of archaeologists, who would try to piece together the forgotten story. While the Mayan factor accounts for the persistence of modern Maya survivors known as day keepers, who continue work with the Tzolkin or sacred 260-day calendar, the author, Dr. Jose Arguelles, plunged into mathematical and historical analysis based on the Tzolk'in, which demonstrated it to be more than just a calendar. What the Mayan factor really pointed to is the elaboration of a point of view about time and the existence of a calendar, or actually a system of calendars, totally apart from either the Gregorian calendar or the lunar calendars of the Old World. Indeed, according to a contemporary Mayan thinker and ceremonialist, Humbatzmen, the Maya actually operated with at least 17 calendars in the prime of their civilization 1300 years ago. Ironically, at Kitt Peak Observatory outside of Tucson, Arizona, where the Vatican has its astronomical observatory, there is a mosaic mural of the Maya civilization with a statement asserting that the Mayan calendar was more accurate and scientific even than the Gregorian calendar. Knowing nothing whatsoever about the earlier efforts at calendar reform, Arguelles' first conclusion drawn from discovery of timing frequencies was to change the calendar. Instinctively, he knew that the 13-month 28-day calendar was the appropriate solution, as well as the first step to be taken by the human race to conform again to natural cycles and thus save itself and its biosphere from destruction. From knowledge of the different Mayan calendars, they also knew that the Maya possessed a 13-moon calendar, the Tun-Uk, or moon count. Following the Chilambalam prophetic tradition of the Maya, and in accord with the Helaical rising of Sirius, the synchronization or New Year's date of the new calendar was set at July 26. With the 13-moon calendar as the basis of his investigation, Arguelles, already a whole systems thinker, had identified the unique Mayan vigesimal mathematical system with the mathematics of the fourth dimension, the cause of a radical revisioning of the modern physics of time. In his study of the relation of the human within its environment, Arguelles came to study the works of the Russian biospheric scientist Vladimir Vernadsky. It was in Vernadsky's final work, Problems in Biogeochemistry 2, 1944, that Arguelles found what he was looking for, a statement confirming Arguelles' perception that modern Gregorian science had totally misperceived the nature of time by applying the matrix of space as measures of time, thereby obscuring altogether the actual nature of time. In other words, time is a dimension totally apart from space, and according to Vernadsky, from the point of view of time, space is an infinitely locatable point. On this basis, Arguelles was able to write a treatise on time viewed from its own dimension, published as The Call of Pakalvotan in 1996. The conclusion to this text considers what Vernadsky calls the biosphere-noosphere transition from the perspective of the analysis of the fourth-dimensional timing standards. According to this analysis, the contemporary human Earth civilization is already in the midst of this transition, which augurs a radical shift in operations and evolutionary advance into what Vernadsky calls the Psychozoic era. Arguelles was convinced that the 13-moon calendar change was the most intelligent and only peaceful way for humanity to change its frequency and participate positively in this climatic evolutionary change. Arguelles also perceived that due to the unconscious mental effects of the Gregorian calendar, the contradictions inherent in global society are greater than the capacity for their resolution, while the problems created for the environment are far greater than nature's capacity to restore and regenerate itself. Something dramatic had to happen. From this was born the World 13-Moon Calendar Change Peace Movement.